Hello, this is Brian Larkin. I am the Manager of Instructional Technology at Santa Clara University. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Zoom, what it is, and what are some effective uses you can do with Zoom. So you might be familiar with this product during the spring 2020 academic semester when classes immediately went online due to the emergency remote teaching. And what it is, Zoom is a video conferencing platform. It allows for really easy video conferencing and creation. If you're not familiar with it, then you might be more familiar with maybe Google Hangouts or WebEx or LMSs. Some of them have their own specific video conferencing platform. There's FaceTime as well with Apple products. But what sets Zoom apart is that it's really a quick and easy tool to set up and get running, whether you are the host or a participant, and also the ubiquity. It really became a standout over the last few months. So with Zoom, what you can do is use the software to conduct synchronous lectures, discussions, debates with students present. If you are in an online class, that might be your only mode of interaction. If you are in a face-to-face or hybrid class, what you can do is kind of replicate some of those very familiar classroom experiences in an online medium. But also faculty and students can use the software to create asynchronous video. No frills, no editing, just really quick video creation. This is good for lecturettes or micro lectures, assignment descriptions, stuff like that. So Zoom is available for desktop, laptops, and mobile phones. If you're the host, you do need the software. If you're a participant, you can typically watch in a browser. And it integrates nicely with LMS and other calendaring systems, which just makes for really quick and easy setup for Zoom sessions. So what I'm going to do here is kind of talk to you some of the basics. If you're not familiar with the tools, you should definitely know these things before you get started. First is muting and unmuting. If you're conducting an online class with Zoom, you absolutely should get familiar with muting and unmuting. You as the host can turn off the microphones for your participants. This is really effective to just kind of capture the attention of the audience and get that focusing on you. There is a mute all option that works really well. Secondly, there's a start-stop video option that, depending on your preferences and your students' bandwidth or Wi-Fi capabilities, you might want to have students or yourself start with video off. This will prevent the video from showing of your kind of FaceTime camera. This allows the attention to be more focused on the slides that you might be sharing, with our third recommendation here, which is just the screen share option. Anything you can bring up on your desktop, more or less, can be shared with your audience. Videos might not be a great idea to share with them due to the choppiness of streaming video, but you can share slides or websites or maybe even a Google Doc with feedback that you've provided to walk the students through. And the most basic use of Zoom is absolutely lecturing. The live lecture, that distance learning, the emergency remote teaching really came into practice over the last few months. And so if you did experience that, you're likely familiar with these basic uses of Zoom. But they're definitely worth pointing out if you are new to the software. Some more features here that can kind of bring in more pedagogical strategies are reactions, breakout rooms, and chat. Reactions allow students to put nonverbal feedback in on their little tile on the Zoom interface. If you have muted students and you're discussing things, you don't necessarily want students to turn on or off their microphones to say that they get something or that they kind of understand what you're talking about. What you could do is encourage them to use the nonverbal reactions, such as the thumbs up or clapping emojis, which will provide you that instant feedback that you might feel is lacking in an online medium. This would replicate sort of those head nods or smiles that the students might throw during a class if they're following along with your lecture. The second thing here are the breakout rooms, and this really is a very popular feature at the school I work at in the online classes. It allows students to get more time to interact with each other. You can do things like puzzling techniques or kind of think, pair, share during breakout rooms to allow students to get more time interacting with their classmates. One feedback point that we've received in online classes is that students sometimes feel as though they're lacking that interaction with classmates. So using the breakout rooms feature, and I would recommend Automatically, which just automatically creates groups, will allow the students to have more time to kind of speak with their classmates. And then also they might be more likely to share out or to turn on their microphone to speak during a class once they get the hang of that. The last one here is the chat feature, and it might be difficult to follow along with kind of the lengthier chats in a Zoom session, but one thing you can use it for are those parking lot questions that might not be pertinent in the moment, but you don't want to lose track of. What you could do is you yourself could type those questions in the chat, or students could type questions in the chat for you to kind of refer back to at the end of a lecture. There is a nice setting that you can enable that allows you to automatically download chats at the end of a Zoom lecture, or Zoom session, I should say, so that you don't need to remember to paste those links into a Google Doc or what have you. So although those instant questions from students might not be kind of easy to follow along with if you're focusing on your slides and your lecture, what you can do is have students put questions in the chat, or you can paste them in there kind of to come back to after the lecture is over, when you might have more time to dedicate to an individual question. So those three features might be they might be new or they might be familiar depending on your use of Zoom over the last few months. So those are kind of the tech settings of using Zoom. There's also some just good pedagogical things you can do using the platform in an online class. The first are live discussions. We'll talk about asynchronous lectures in just a minute, but what you can have is probably the closest approximation to an in-class experience in an online course by having discussions with your students over Zoom. Depending on how disciplined they are or how small your classes are, you can really have good feedback from students if they have their cameras on, if they're giving thumbs up, if they're reacting. You can ask them follow-up questions so that it's less of a lecture and more of an ongoing discussion. And it can really help with that sense of community in the class. So a live synchronous Zoom session is really good for discussions, for brainstorming strategies, for debates. Anything where there's dialogue or discourse is a really good and effective use case for using Zoom for synchronous video sessions. The other good use case for Zoom are these micro lectures or smaller lecture content pieces. Typically quick content with little or no editing. You can create those really highly recommended 6 to 8 minute micro lectures where you're covering a content with slides or visual aids. These are hopefully less dependent on kind of interruptions from students or questions, but this is more or less you going through the content. These videos are easily replicable and can be placed on an LMS for students to watch after, or for them to respond to questions or discussion prompts. Essentially, what's nice about this is that you're doing the same thing you would in Zoom, except you're clicking the record button. So if you start a Zoom session by yourself, click record, you can create a nice little micro lecture that's good for flipped classroom videos, for lecture content, and for assignment details and descriptions. So in an online class, if you think your assignment description for your final project is lacking, you can model good technology use by creating a video description of the assignment for students to watch, and if you get multiple questions about the assignment prompt, then you can encourage them to rewatch that. So just some thoughts about using Zoom. You may have received a crash course in the software during the last semester, but hopefully this brings up some new ideas about how you can effectively use Zoom to create content and to interact with your students in an online course. Thanks.